Okay guys, I'm over here troubleshooting this Purge unit. Seems like it's just running constantly, pumping out, but seems like it's pumping out constantly, but that's why I'm here checking it. Right now my Purge sucking temp is 58, so that's telling me that the evaporator, which is that Purge tank right there, has nothing but vapor refrigerant coming from the condenser of the chiller. So that's what keeps up the suction temp inside the evaporator of that Purge unit. But once, let's say I get air inside my chiller, that air is going to start filling up that evaporator on that Purge tank. So the heat transfer will not be that great, and so my suction temp will eventually start climbing down. Once it gets past 18 degrees, the pump kicks on and starts pumping out that air. And once that air is completely out, my suction temp will start to climb back up. But once it goes above 22, that pump is disabled. And I'll take you around and show you the Purge unit itself. It's right here. This is the Purge tank. It's like the evaporator. And this is its own little system, refrigeration system. This is the Purge tank. Has nothing to do with the chiller. This is a whole different, completely refrigerant. This is R134. That's R123. It's a low pressure. So right here, this is underneath this Purge tank. You got your vapor refrigerant coming from your condenser of the chiller. This is at a much lower temperature, so it attracts that vapor. It attracts that vapor, and that's what keeps the evaporator at a high enough temperature where it won't kick out the pump. But let's say the chiller has air in the system, so that air is going to come in with the vapor refrigerant and start filling up this tank. So once it starts filling up this tank, the heat transfer in the evaporator is not great, so the suction temp will start climbing down. And once it gets below 18, like I said, the sensor eventually will kick on the solenoids and the pump. These two solenoids, isolation solenoids, open up, the contacts close, and the solenoids open up, and that's when it starts pumping out the air out of here. And once it pumps out all the air, or enough air, and this tank fills up with nothing but vapor refrigerant, the suction temp starts climbing up. And once it gets above 22 degrees, it will disable that pump, and these will close, contacts will open. So what I did, make sure that we got the proper charge on this little small Purge unit. I'm taking a subcool reading. I took a measurement of right here, my liquid line temperature coming out the condenser, and I was at 81.6. And according to the manufacturer, they want you to take a temperature on the second or third U-bend opposite of the discharge line over here. So that's where I'm getting my temperature over here. And I got a temperature of 89.4 and 89.4 around there, or 0.3 around there. But so that gives me a subcooling of 7.8. And what they want to see, they want to see a subcooling of 5 and 15. if the unit's properly charged. And right here, this is your liquid line, this is the metering device, and down here, after the metering device, they want to see a temperature of 0. And sometimes you're okay if you read between -5 and 10 degrees. You should still be good. But anything other than that, you got some kind of refrigerant problem. So the next thing I did, I isolated my condenser refrigerant coming from my condenser right here. These two shut-off valves. That way, I don't got any vapor going into my purge tank. So without any vapor, the warmer vapor going into the purge tank, that kind of acts of so that's gonna, with no vapor going into that purge tank, eventually that evaporator will start getting cold because there's no warm refrigerant going through it. There's no heat to absorb. So obviously that evaporator is gonna start climbing down, or the temp's gonna start climbing down. So it's gonna act kind of like air in that tank. So there's no heat transfer. So eventually it's gonna start that pump again. It's gonna enable it to start. So that's how you know if your sensor is good. See that sensor going on that suction line? That's how you know. That's how you test to see if it's working. So once you shut them off and the suction temp drops low enough or below 18, that pump should come on. And if it does, it should keep running and running and running. It should stay running until you open these valves back up. Once you open these valves back up, your suction temp will start to climb up again. And so far, I don't see anything wrong with the purge unit. I know my solenoids are opening up because when it's pumping out, when the pump out machine is running, you can take this off and you can feel it. You can feel air coming out and the suction in here. So you know that's working. Basically, you gotta sometimes there'll be a restrictor in here somewhere, a restrictor right here. Sometimes that will clog up and won't let the air come out. So eventually you can put a hose from right here and right there, that'll bypass your restrictor and you'll bleed out the air like that, or vent it out. All that's working, so we verify that the purge unit is working. So now more likely seems like there's a leak somewhere in the low side of this chiller. The low side, because it's still, I'm saying it's the low side because it's still sucking in air while it's running. This is a low pressure chiller. When this chiller is running, your condenser will be in a positive pressure, maybe 3 psi. We'll show you right here. Condenser is 2.9 psi. So you know you're not sucking in air. You're not under a vacuum when it's running. The only thing that's under a vacuum when it's running is your evaporator, your low side. See? So if it's sucking in air when it's running, you know you got a leak somewhere on the low side. But let's say it only sucks in when it's off. When it's off and it sucks in air, it could be either from your low side or your high side, because the whole chiller's under a vacuum when it's off. So to verify that it's not the high side, you turn on the chiller, purge out all the air, and let it run. And if it doesn't suck in any more air when it's running, then you know it's on the high side, because it's not sucking in air when it's running. And obviously it's not going to be sucking through the low side of the or the evaporator side, because that's under a vacuum. You're not getting in any air. Your purge unit's not running. So when it's off, you're sucking in it. If you got a leak on the high side, you're gonna be sucking in air when it's off. But once it's running, you get all the air out. You're not gonna suck. You're not gonna be sucking in any air, because that's high side's under pressure. But that's how I usually check for leaks, or determine where the leak is at, or at least have a kind of like a reference point of where to start. And that's pretty much it, guys. I don't know if I missed anything, or I'm still you know, I'm still learning on all these chillers. But if I miss anything, or you guys know about of a better way to troubleshoot these units, let me know. Thank you. Bye bye.